Iraq, state of Illinois, in the United States of America. Today is October what? 21st in the year of your Lord, 2019. We're 10 days away from All Hallows Eve. So, how y'all doing this morning? I'm back. I'm refreshed. Just got back from Kansas City, Missouri, the state of Missouri. State of misery, we call it. Killer City, state of misery. Shout out to all my Kansas City family, all my bros. Shout out to Rip T Fresh, a.k.a. Terrence, my day one homie. Shout out to the Popper. I'm KC. If you don't know, IamKC.com. I'm KC store down on the historic Jazz District. We got local artists engaged in not just black entrepreneurship, but community revitalization, grassroots, bottom up revitalization. So I saw some good things happening in Kansas City. More power to y'all, man. Because I know how it is being black in Kansas City, man. Born illegal. So shout out to Kansas City. I didn't get to see everybody I had interest in seeing, but I'll be back in KC in the spring. Also, today is my grandmother's 90th birthday. The grandmother who raised me, who raised 6 kids on her own and then flipped around and raised half her damn grandkids on her own. Grandma Sonetta, Miss Jefferson, you know, the mother of the entire East Hills Village housing project. Matriarch of, what is it called? What's it called? Anchor to the Rock Baptist Church. I mean, this is a woman, you know, held whole communities on her back. She's one of those old school type grandmothers. I don't even know if y'all making grandmothers like that anymore. I don't know if the mold is broken. But shout out to Grandma on your 90th birthday. Looking forward to talking to you this afternoon. And I got to see you last week, so it was wonderful visiting with Grandma. I wish I could have stayed for the birthday, but you know, got her some beautiful flowers and had a wonderful time. But shout out to my big sister who is turned around after Grandma buoyed and raised us. Now she's tending to and caring for my grandmother in her 90s. So it's all beautiful, man. Family, man. Family. And y'all know I say, I don't play with words. Yes, I do, but I shouldn't. And there's a big difference between relatives and families. All your relatives ain't your family, and all your family ain't your relatives. But, you know, sometimes the stars align, and you do get relatives who are family at the same time, and family who are actually relatives. Shout out to Big Uncle Chris, Auntie Vaughn. Now, I can't run everybody's name down. Little nephew Marcel, just him and his wife just secured their first home. You know, being secure, got their first baby, starting their little African families. Wonderful, wunderbar. You know, and of course Topaz, my oldest niece, and then she just had her third little baby. Zafir is his name, and sleeping and drinking breast milk is his game. So, I mean, I'm just happy. I'm in a good mood, man. I can't even talk about all this stuff. Oh, I got one more piece of good news. I've been out of the show because I've been in and out of going to see specialists. I injured my shoulder, and I have some pain and some limited range of motion. And they said I had a torn rotator cuff. Then they said I had a punctured rotator cuff. And then they said I had some other issues. But then they told me I went to see my third specialist. Well, I saw first the general practitioner and 2 specialists. So I went to see my second specialist, and he said that that I had already been signed up for physical therapy on the shoulder. He said within 3 months I should be back without any surgery because otherwise I'm healthy. And you know, it's something weird when I go to the doctor. I never say that I'm vegan. I never say that. I never mention in my diet or lifestyle. I just walk in and like keep my business, and I'm there for what I'm there for. I never mention that I'm vegan. But they always tell me, oh, you're in good shape, you know, you're doing great for your age, and everything's wonderful, all the tests came back, oh, it's fine, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. But then I always find that if I do get around to mentioning that I'm vegan, they always kind of choke, because then the doctors always act like they kind of regret telling me I'm healthy. Because they just don't like that, because, you know, doctors don't know nothing about nutrition. You can become a full-on doctor, specialist, whatever, without having taken any hours of nutritional training. So, you know, But it is what it is. But so I'm glad to hear that because I thought I would have to get rotator cuff repair surgery. And I'm out here. I'm not 16 anymore, but I'm out here still doing cartwheels and running through the woods and whatnot, skipping daisies and smelling peanuts and whatnot. Things that I'm not going to slow down. I just have to do more warm up and stretching and cool down and stretch downs. That's all. I just gotta put more planning into my physical activity. I can't just jump in with both feet like I used to do when I was young. And and having two sons, and y'all know how it is, brothers. Ladies, turn away for a second. Brothers, you know how it is when you have sons, and it's that eternal unspoken competition to maintain your alpha status. It's terrible. But, I'm going to keep doing it. And so I'm in a good mood until I start talking about what I'm actually here to talk about. I know I'm missing people with the shout outs, and I apologize. I still want to shout you out. But, if I miss you, then I'll take notes and I'll give you your proper respect due tomorrow. I'm going to try to get to Popper on the show. We went to high school together, and he's been an independent hip hop artist and entrepreneur, but not like a parasitic entrepreneur. Like, I ain't gonna say no names because I know how y'all love black businesses, and that's just the holy grail. I don't know why we're so obsessed with black businesses. We were the first people on the planet to establish markets. I don't like this concept, first black this, first black that. Oh, and my wife was showing me an article just yesterday of a first black woman to open her first microbrewery, the first black woman to have the first microbrewery. Now, I have to say this, and I know I'm the Grinch of Pan-Africanism. Shout out to Black Star, the Underground King. He gave me that name. I'm supposed to be meeting with him this evening. But he told me that I'm the Grinch of Pan-Africanism. Every time black folks get something good going, I got to come and try to ruin it. And that is not my intention. That is not my belief. But I'll carry that because I can see how things appear that way. But as things appear, they are not always as they seem. It's not that I'm a hater. I just have such optimism. See, my negativity flows from optimism. I think we could do better. I think we could be fully sovereign, liberated, free, revolutionary, humanized, ecological, united Africa and African diaspora. I got some ideas that I want to see materialize on this physical plane. So, my wife showed me this article, and there ain't nothing wrong with a black woman opening a brewery, a microbrewery, and make little organic beers. I'm not a beer drinker, but I know people who are, and there's people, my closest homie, drink the devil's nectar, drink spirits. So I'm not downing people for drinking beer, but here's the problem with these black firsts or only black. I call it the black first syndrome or the only black syndrome. Number one, generally everything you think is the first black is not the first black because there was some African somewhere long before there was anything such as America, anything such as even European imperialism, when black people were liberated and sovereign, living in our own spaces, defining ourselves, that I'm sure it was some African that did that. Beer. Egyptians were making beer. They found old beer cans strewn across the pyramid work sites. So Africans have been making beers and wines since before Europeans was on the planet. But maybe you want to limit it to just America, United States, a country that ain't even 300 years old. The people who are a million years old of consistent lineage, the first people, the original man and woman. If you want to just limit our existence and our reality to slavery, fine. Even if you go back to that, daggum well, I don't care if it's the original recipe of Colonel Sanders or what's that liquor that they talk about, Hennessy or vodka, and grain whiskey. It was Africans who did all the damn labor. And the cracker would come and stamp his name on it. The African would make something, lubricating apparatus for locomotive, cotton gin systems, more efficient processes, architectural, agricultural, even early technological devices. Africans were doing the work. We were the laborers. We didn't just pick cotton. We were engaged in all forms of industrial labor. And when you do work, You come up with innovations. That's just how humans are. When we work, we come up with ways to make things easier. That's just a part of our nature. That's how we evolved, innovating. But a black man, there were centuries when a black man and a black woman could not secure a patent, could not apply for a copyright, could not go to court to have their interests or have their views represented in a court of law, especially against a white person. So Africans, we have almost 300 years of creation, innovation, and invention that was not accounted for, that we didn't get credit for. So when you say this is the first black, you more than likely than not, there's some beautiful brother, some beautiful sister buried in a mass grave that lived a life of misery that ain't getting the credit they do. And there are millions of African descendants who ain't getting the money from those patents. And don't even give me it, it's even beyond our physical labor. Now our DNA and biology. You know, the HeLa cells of Henrietta Lacks. So I just don't, I feel squeamish when we in the streets doing the Holy Ghost dance over the first black, the only black. We can at least start saying the first black that has been acknowledged. That's what the gay folks do. See, the LGBTQ movement, they've gotten enough from us. You know, they took a lot from the civil rights movement. I ain't mad at them for doing it. If I saw some population, non-black population of people making some progress, making some headway against imperialism, and I see they got some methodologies we don't have, I would adopt those methodologies. I don't get mad at that. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. But what the gay people say, if there's a gay person running for office, they'll be like, this is the first openly gay mayor, the first openly gay presidential candidate, the first openly gay CEO, the first openly gay astronaut, because the gay folks know it's been gay people doing stuff all the while. Like if you had a gay FBI director, they would have to say this is the first openly gay act, because we all know the most prominent, J. Edgar Hoover, was queer, non-gender conforming, homosexual, rape, genocidal racist, but that's another part. So they say first openly gay. They don't just say first gay, because that gives acknowledgement to all the non-gender conforming LGBTQAI people that were in office that either didn't want to or weren't allowed to be openly who they were. So at least when we say the first black woman, the first black man to do this or that, say the first known or the first acknowledged black man or black woman to do this or that. So we at least leave the door open for archaeologists, researchers, historians to go and get the facts and say, nah, you weren't the first. And it doesn't have to be an antagonistic thing. If I go and do anything first, I'm going to be like, I'm sure I'm not the first. And here's another, that's one aspect. I'd be like, I'm the first known. I'm the first acknowledged. Even in new technology, well, you know, it wasn't no internet back then. So you get a black man do a computer thing, black man that does a technological thing, then that's the fun. That, but you don't even know, even in new emerging industries, the internet, cellular phone technology, bioengineering, nanotech, artificial intelligence, there's a lot of black and other non-white people tinkering in basements of these big corporate offices. There's a lot of African brothers and sisters on the continent tinkering. And these white people who are on missionary work, who are on safari, go into the African continent, go into Haiti, Nigeria. I mean, Nigerians, they good with numbers. They don't just hustle us on the phone, man. They're some of the most brilliant engineers, mathematicians in the world out of Nigeria. And so these Zuckerbergs and these Elon Musk, they go and rob these brothers and sisters. So even if it's a brand new technology that ain't even been around that long, we still don't know if they didn't rob the African brother or sister and come back to America and like, look what I discovered. White folks didn't stop Columbusing in 1492. They still getting their Columbus on. Columbus wasn't the first Columbus. You know, we forgot about Amerigo Vespucci. We forgot about the raiding, murderous Vikings who came to the so-called New World to pillage and rape before Columbus just was the first to establish a foothold. So, that's the thing. So if you're into first blacks, I'm not into first black. I'm not into only black. That's just not something I'm into. That I don't get off on that. You know what? Everybody gets off on their different stuff. But if you do, say the only acknowledged black or the first acknowledged black. And another thing, to me, when I hear the first black or the only black, that is not showing progress to me. That is evidence of our regression. Again, we are one of the most enterprising people, the most inventive people, the most dynamic people on the face of the earth, the most copied and the most vilified people. So if we got only one person that's able to break into this one thing over here, that's because there have been generations of African people who have been stifled, who have been cut off at the knees economically, academically, socially, culturally. And for some of y'all, I'll say this for y'all benefit, even spiritually, degraded, dehumanized, beat down, held down. So to me, the only black and first black is evidence of our regression, of our oppression, not of our progress. So forgive me that the Bro Diallo show, and I like a lot of times, I play the Holy Ghost music and I celebrate with y'all, but I'm not there with y'all all the way. I'm just doing it for y'all because this is y'all's show. I work for y'all. This is for the people, them, by, for, and of the people, unlike the rapist pedophiles that founded this country. When I say by, for, and of the people, I mean it. It ain't just fancy rhetoric. Like when George Washington and Thomas Jefferson said it, and Adam Smith. So forgive me that I can't dance in the streets with y'all. Black folks. And speaking of black folks, who's black? Who's nice? Who's whack? F that. Who is black? Who ain't black? Well, according to Fat Joe, the preeminent, ethno scholar, he said all Latinos are black. Now, Fat Joe says he's of Puerto Rican and Cuban descent. Now, Puerto Rico means port of riches. That Puerto Rico is not an ethnic name, it's not a cultural name. It's not even a national identification. It is a locale. Port of Rico is port of riches that was established by the Spanish to set up a conduit for the rape and exploitation. Now, back in the 90s, the Puerto Ricans started saying, I'm Boriqueña, I'm Boricua. They stopped using Puerto Rico because they knew that was an empty term to call yourself. I'm Puerto Richian. Where are you from? I'm from the Puerto Riches. Like, what? So they tried to, there was an awakening. We weren't the only people denied our history. We weren't the only people who the white man attempted to erase our humanity and our history. We weren't the only people walking around believing that our history did not start until slavery, until the white man discovered us and brought us the light of Western civilization. We weren't the only people that fell for that okie doke. And we weren't the only people who began to have an awakening and to recapture our history and recapture our true selves. So just like you had an Afrocentric awakening, the Afrocentric movement that later became the African-centered understanding and African-centered awakening, Native Americans went through the same thing. And there were several native peoples who were completely wiped out. Arawaks, Tolenogos, and whole list of people, again, we will never know. Because when white people were raping, mutilating, and desecrating, they often didn't keep records. Or sometimes they kept detailed records because, the people who financed these genocidal expositions wanted to keep their money right. But then as the white man often wanted to bury his crimes. So in everywhere from the Library of Congress to Whitehall in Europe, there are records they don't give us access to. They have documents that are classified for the U.S. federal government dating back prior to the Civil War. They got classified documents. They don't even tell us dirt of people that are dead and buried. We can't even prosecute them anymore. They're secretive, i.e. they lie. But anyway, Fat Joe said all Latinos are black. But before I can talk about it, I have to say, what the bumbaclad, what the hell is a Latino? And what is a Hispanic? Let's just clarify Hispanic first. A Hispanic is a linguistic title. Anyone who has Spanish as their mother tongue or primary language is a Hispanic. That's it. Nothing fancy. If you're from Spain and Spain is in Europe, born, raised, and died in Spain, you are classified as Hispanic, even though Spaniards don't really use the term. But if a Spaniard is in Spain, he is a European, he is a Spaniard, he is a white man. But if he comes to the United States, as soon as he crossed that border, abracadabra, he's Hispanic. That's all it is. So Panamanian, if you're from Panama, Puerto Rico, you're Hispanic. Now, a lot of people who are not Hispanic get called Hispanic, like Portuguese speaking Brazilians. They don't speak Spanish, but when they come here, they can often be called Hispanic. But a lot of time, them people don't care. They say, you better run because Donald Trump is trying to run us out of the country. They don't give a damn. Call them what they want. Give me a job. Let me feed my family. Let me live. Call me whatever you want. Call me Hispanic. Call me Mexican. Call me MS-13. Whatever. Give me the job. Let me live. And how could I blame them for that? So that's all a Hispanic is. So we put that to bed. So Fat Joe, being of Puerto Rican, Boricua, being of that descent, he's Hispanic. He's Cubano. So yeah, he would classify as Hispanic. Now, what is a Latino? Or Latinx, as the woke, hip, brown people say. The brown people that are down people. They say Latinx because Latino leaves out Latina. Latina, it's a gendered language with masculine and feminine and all that. I don't pretend to be an expert in Spanish. I only know what they tell me. I got to take it with a grain of salt because I ain't really bothered to verify it. But now they say Latinx. That includes men, women, and all kinds of other people who don't even classify as a man or a woman, the people who are somewhere else on that gender perspective. Okay, you want to be more? I'm pro-political correctness. I'm probably the only person who will acknowledge I support political correctness. Now, I prefer to call it political accuracy, but whatever. I want to be all kinds of correctness. I want to be politically, socially, culturally. I want to be correct. Right and exact. But that's me. The rest of y'all is like, I want the right to be an idiot, and I don't want to be challenged on my idiocracy. So that's why everybody hates political correctness, not because they think it's just me. Political correctness has nothing with being polite, with nothing with doing with protecting people's feelings, because most people get ass hurts when they're required to be political correct. So political correctness, who's hurt? Pro or anti-political correct people? Anti-political correct people are more ass hurt than pro, from my observation. But anyway, I digress. Back to the topic. Latinos, Latinx, people. All that means is anybody originating from, born into, or originating from Latin America. That's it. They see, man. They see. You from Panama, from Mexico, Chile, Argentina, Venezuela, Brazil. You're a Latino or Latinx. That's all that means. It does not say anything else about you. It says literally nothing else about you. Except there's another caveat. None of these things stick up, man. They just can't hold it together. Because there's a little country called Guyana that was a little British enclave on the South American continent. And they speak it in English. And it's predominantly black, followed by Indian. Now, East Indian, from India. And this is a racist term in Guyana, but I can say it safely here because nobody knows it. but all my West Indians, especially Guyanese people listening to this, will know what I say. You got the black people and you got the buck people, scont, mother. Anyway, you got the East Indians and the black folks. And even though the blacks are in the majority, the East Indians run the economy because it's still a predominantly agricultural thing. And after emancipation in Guyana, black people were sick of the land. They didn't want to work the land anymore because they worked the land for generations for free under chattel slavery. So when emancipation came to Guyana, they left the land and the Indians swooped in and took over the agricultural infrastructure and essentially re-enslaved black folks. But whatever. Stuff happens. But anyway, Guyana. So you can meet a Guyanese, even though technically, geographically, historically, they are Latinos. They are from Latin America. They don't speak the Spanish. They are not Hispanic. They're non-Hispanic Latinos. But nobody calls them that. They call the Guyanese Caribbean people. And the Caribbean people, the Jamaicans, Trinidad, Trinidad, they call the GT man, Georgetown. They call they call them, even though Guyana is embedded in South America, it's a part of the South American continent, they call them Caribbean. So none of these titles, the title Latino is very fluid. It's not even a fixed term. Because not all Latinos are recognized as Latinos. Especially since they're mostly black. I think if Guyanese were predominantly non-black, even though they were English speaking, I think the rest of Latin America would do more to envelope them in the Latinx. Because guess what? Latinx people are racist as AF. But only in Latin America. They come here, all of a sudden they become a racial minority. But that's all a whole new thing. But I'm getting a little off topic. Let's go back to, all the way back to Fat Joe. When Fat Joe said, all Latinos are black. Fat Joe said, and I quote, even in Puerto Rico, when you go to the Caribbean, let's speak about Latinos not being black, Joe said. Latinos are black. In Cuba, at one time, there were 8 million Cubans. 5 million, unfortunately, were slaves. He's just heart bleeds for that. 3 million were actual Cubans. And they integrated and had babies. Same thing with Puerto Rico. When you go to Lioza, and when you talk about Santeria, that came from motherland Africa. Oh, he said motherland Africa. Sometimes Latino may even identify themselves with African and black culture more than black people. Oh, so yeah, now he's doing that blacker than thou. Wow, okay, I mean, that's the blackest thing he's ever said besides nigga. There ain't no, this ain't no crazy thing. Fat Joe ain't on crack. He know what he talking about. He's speaking about himself in the third person. I ain't saying that about him. So Fat Joe said, Cubans are black. He said, Puerto Ricans are black. And he said Latinos, which means are all Argentinians, all Venezuelans, all Chileans, all Brazilians, all Panamanians, right? Hell, all Mexicans are black people. And I know if he said that in Puerto Rico, he'd get his ass whooped. Because a lot of Latinos, if you go to them and say, not just also, because Puerto Ricans are Latinos, even though they're not in Latin America, they're in the Caribbean. Dominicans are Latinos, even though they're not in Latin America, they're in the Caribbean. And the Caribbean isn't considered Latin America because Jamaicans aren't Latinos. Now, Puerto Ricans are actually Hispanic, but not Latino. Same thing goes for Cubans and Dominicans. They're Hispanics, not Latinos. If we just gonna go by the definitions, but words don't have meanings. Words has uses, to quote Peter Cotton. But Peter Cotton, and King Dita, to quote Queen Dita, because he just said that to me the other day. He said words have uses, not meanings. So if y'all want to flip, like I was arguing with these people about the definition of a homosexual. And they wanted to redefine, they didn't even acknowledge that they were redefining. They said a man that does butt stuff with a woman is gay. And I said, no, that's not how homosexual is defined. If anything you do with a woman sexually, even if it's butt stuff between a man and a woman, that's considered heterosexual sex, as homosexuality is defined. And if you want to redefine homosexuality or broaden the definition of homosexuality, you have to at least acknowledge that I'm taking this and I'm moving it from point A to point E. I'm moving but they wouldn't. So people just mess with meaning. And that's on purpose, because if there is no meaning, there can be no grounding. If there is no grounding, there can be no foundational understanding. If there's no foundational understanding, there can be no true transformation. You can't, unless you understand a thing, you cannot act upon that thing. Anything you engage with that you don't understand has more power to impact and direct you than you have to impact and direct it. That's why they kept us so ignorant of everything from capitalism to Christ. Anything you do out of ignorance, even if it's done out of the goodness of your heart, it's generally going to do more to manipulate you than you can to manipulate, direct, and control it. Knowledge is power. But I digress. So they messing with this thing. And when you really look at it, who's Latino, who's Hispanic, who gets enveloped and who doesn't, it has less to do with culture than it does with race. It does with race. And yes, Cuba, black people, there are countries in Latin America that have majority black population, like Brazil. There are countries in Latin America that have a huge, significant black minority, like Mexico, over 1 million blacks. Puerto Rico. And the racial hierarchy is identical to the racial hierarchy right here in the United States. You ain't even got to do no academic work. You go look at Univision. You go look at the telenovelas. And all of the people, and then you ain't even got to go look at TV. You look at their publications. They got Latin people. They got Latin tabloids. They got Latin newspapers. You look at their news broadcast, and it's always the light, bright, white Latinos and Hispanics. You look at their television shows. It's always the light, bright, white Latinos and Hispanics. And if you want to see a black or dark-skinned Latino or Hispanic, more often than not, it's a lighter Latino in blackface. Or that person is a villain 9 times out of 10. Fat Joe has made literally millions of dollars off of black culture. He ain't doing salsa. He ain't doing merengue. He's doing black hip-hop from the South Bronx. And so, yes, he's going to claim black because he's making money off of black. Just like when you go to South Africa and the wealthy, De Beers, racist people in South Africa, the Afrikaners, say, we're African too. Charlize Theron said she was an African woman because she was born and raised in South Africa. So, people love to claim us when they're making money off of us. All Latinos are not black. All Hispanics are not black. In fact, the Latinos who hold economic and political and military power in Latin America are deliberately non-black. Latin America has some of the most strictest racial hierarchies. They have Latino nations from Mexico all the way down to Chile and in Dominican Republic that have strict racial hierarchies. And the Mestizos, the mulattoes, and the Africanos, los negros, are at the bottom of the economic scale. That's why every time I've encountered in my lifelong activist, I've been on the front lines of the black struggle since I was 14 years old, and I went and joined the Stop the Violence Coalition. I have been part of some effort or organization for liberation and empowerment of African people from that day, since I was 14 years old. And every single time I encounter a Latinx or Hispanic individual that says they want black and brown unity, the first thing I say is, what country are you from? You're from the Dominican Republic. I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm from Mexico. The second thing I ask them, how do they treat black people in your country? And many of them don't even acknowledge that they have black people in their country. Oh, we don't see race. We don't see race. We're just all the same. We're just Puerto Rican. Dominican is Dominican. We don't have the race like America. The race America. But all I got to do is go to the worldwide internet and put in Dominican racism, Dominican race. And there's article after article. And even in the Latin press, there's easy. All I got to do is go to Google Translate. And I can see that the black people in Puerto Rico, the black people in Dominican Republic, the black people in Mexico, the black people in Brazil are marching for their rights, being murdered, assassinated. So, like, what is a Latino? Latino can be black, African descent, can be native descent for the Latin American countries where they didn't completely obliterate the native people. So they are natives. They are Europeans, white, crackers, honkies, devils, colonizers, whatever word you got for the white people who invaded, enslaved, and committed genocide against the natives. Latin America ain't no doggone different than the United States of America. It's the same history and the same hierarchy. That's why when the United States went and stole half of Mexico in the Mexican-American War, they stole half of Mexico's territory and incorporated Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California used to all be part of Mexico. And the United States snatched it. And guess what? It wasn't no revolution. It wasn't no disruption. Why? Because they had the same damn economy, the same damn racial hierarchy. Black people were enslaved, white people were ruling, natives were under genocidal oppression, and the mulatto people, they were judged according to if you are mixed heritage, if you are European native descent, if you're a European African descent, did you get the good hair? Did you get straight hair, dark hair? Light eyes, dark eyes. Same thing they did here. The closer you were to white, the more privileges you got. The closer you were to black, the fewer privileges you got. And it's still that way today in the United States. Colorism or whatever you want to call it. And it's the same way. It's the same damn way for the mulatto race. Now, being that Latin America was Catholic, predominantly from the Catholic empires, from Puerto Rico and Spain, they didn't have the puritanical race anti-misogynist laws. In the United States, they had strict anti-misogynist race mixing laws. Right? And so there was a lot more mixing, quote unquote, mixing of blood. But as you go up the hierarchy in Latin America, they were just exactly identical to the white people. They didn't mix their blood. The white Latinos said that race mixing was for the low-class whites. Only the low-class whites would have a baby with a native or a negro. The upper echelons, the elite of Latin American society. And if you want to understand anything about how freaking white, how Eurocentric, how racist Latin America is to this day, Deontay made it so I can't just say to this day one time anymore. Anytime I say to this day, I got to say it at least twice. He didn't mess me up. He didn't put something in my brain. To this day. All you got to do is go back to World War II. When the Nazis lost the war, the Nazis could have ran anywhere. Where did the Nazis go? The most racist, the whitest and the racist people on planet Earth at that time. They were so racist, they even made people like FDR and Winston Churchill. And if you know, Winston Churchill is a genocidal racist himself, but he looked at the Nazis and was like, damn, homie, I'm a racist, but damn, I'm not that racist. Where did the Nazis go? We all know about Operation Paperclip, where like 2,000 of the Nazis came to the United States. Nazi scientists were smuggled out and into America. The Nazi rocket scientists, Nazi or German physicists who were Nazis. But where did the other Nazis go? Those were the Nazi scientists. What about the Nazi doctors who did the experiments? What about the concentration camp guards and the officers? Where did they go? They didn't all end up in Nuremberg. Only a small fraction of the Nazis went to Nuremberg. Where did they end up? Thousands upon thousands of Nazis. Where did they go? Latin America. There's entire documentaries on it. There are entire books on it. There's even a movie. If you don't want to do no boring ass documentary or no boring ass book, there's a movie called Boys of Brazil. And it's a movie about how all the Nazis not only ran to Latin America, they blended in. And they were hella comfortable because Latin America in the post-World War II era, just like the United States, was an apartheid country. They had apartheid. They had racial hierarchy. They had ideas of eugenics and racial purity all over Latin America. 1940s and 1950s. Some of the last Nazis, known Nazi officers, died there in the 1980s. So what you saying? And the Nazis were cozy there. So what you telling me? Some people say there are even some old Nazis still there. There was a Nazi by the name of Roschmann. Roschmann. He was called the Butcher of Riga, a mass murderer. He killed personally murdered over 100,000 people. Jews, homosexuals, disabled people. And you know, there were quite a few Africans in Germany, quite a few mulattoes in Germany, and they weren't considered German. They got it too. He died in Brazil in 1980. He lived out the rest. He died an old man with his feet up in 84. And then Gustav Wagner, known as the Beast, died in Brazil in 1980. Roschmann died in Chile in 1984. They were there chilling like villains. So far, there's been over 9,000 Nazi officers. These are high-ranking officials who gave the freaking orders. Over 9,000 Nazi officers went into Latin America, Chile, Brazil, Argentina. And they blended right in, and they lived good. They didn't go there and live in the sewers. They didn't go there and live in hiding. They were welcomed. They were welcomed guests of the high, wealthy families, the oligarchs, and the officials there, because Latin America, had the same ideas of racial purity. There were so many damn Nazis all over Latin America, and they didn't go there and stop being Nazis. They didn't go there and realize the error of their ways. They went there and promoted the same racial hygiene and racial hierarchies. Oh, let's talk about it. This black and brown rhetoric. Even the Jews, when they established Israel through genocide and terrorism, when they set up their own nation, they sent in squads all over Latin America to capture Nazis. They still hunting for Nazis in Latin America to this day. But you want to tell me Latin America is black? All Latinos are black? Then how did all them white Aryan Nazis hide amongst all them black folks? They'd have stuck out like sore thumbs. These were wanted men. And why would all these black nations offer refuge? They didn't offer refuge for Africans. Even now, Haitians can't go next door to Puerto Rico for relief. Haitians can't, you black, you can't even go to the Dominican Republic for vacation. It's 2019 and they still don't welcome blacks. And if you go to Latin America and you black, you better have bank in your pocket. And the moment you spend your last dime in their economy, you better be on the next thing smoking back to wherever you from. Don't play this game. Black people, everybody want to be their friend, be our friend. When they profiting off of us. They ain't willing to suffer with us. They ain't willing to fight for us. And they ain't even willing to share a little bit of what they made off of us with us. All Latinos are not black. All African Latinos are black. All Afro-Latinos are black. But there are white Latinos. There are native Latinos. There are mixed race Latinos. Many of the mixed race Latinos don't identify as black. And in fact, many of the mixed race Latinos engage most aggressively in anti-black ideas and behaviors because they want to prove to their pure race white Latinos that they're down with them. So they feel they got to be more racist to prove their worthiness to be white. And who is one of the most famous Puerto Ricans in the black community? One of the greatest Puerto Ricans, one of the greatest black men to ever be born was who? Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen. He was raised in Puerto Rico. And you go read any of his books where he talks on the subject, or you go listen to any of his lectures on YouTube right now. And whenever he talks about Puerto Rico, he don't talk about the land of my birth, the land of my home. He doesn't say that. He doesn't speak fondly of Puerto Rico. He said Puerto Rico was apartheid, it was segregated, it was racist. And he was glad as hell to get the hell out of there. You had black people running from Latin America to live in the dirty South because the dirty South was less overtly racist than parts of Latin America. And it's insulting to me. And I'd have more respect for Fat Joe if Fat Joe said, listen, there is a large segment of the Latin American population that is African, that is of African descent. And to this day, in 2019, those African people are discriminated against. They are oppressed. There is racism. And me, as a mixed race, as a Mestizos, mixed race Latino or Latinx, I'm going to call it out. We got to fix ourselves. Latin American people came to the United States and got love from black people. We moved in every time. Whenever you find a black slum, you go west of that, you find just west of the black slum was the barrio, the Latino slum. And they would hang out with us, they'd shoot hoop with us, play stickball with us, bust raps with us, and when the Latin rappers came, they embraced us. And many parts we have benefited, like he said, Santeria, samba music, Babalao, Babalu. Remember Ricky Ricardo, Babalu. That's an African god they singing to. So as people of mixed race heritage or of European descent that have received so much from African people, it is a travesty that Latin America still has racial hierarchy, racial division, and racial oppression against black people. And I, as Fat Joe, one of the most famous Latinos in America, I'm going to call it out, and I'm going to tell Latino people, cut that mess out. White people have been more loyal to it. Black people have given us more loyalty than we deserve. And it's time for us to return the favor. Instead of trying to wipe the slate clean and lie and say you black. And say all Latinos are black. What's this game about? I remember when I first moved to New York, one of the first confrontations I had, I wasn't living in New York for 2 weeks. And I was playing basketball in Brooklyn. And it wasn't even a rough part of Brooklyn. If you know Brooklyn, I was in Park Slope, Brooklyn. Yes, Park Slope. They had a basketball court there. And if you know Park Slope, that is like that was gentrified. It was gentrified before the word gentrification. I was a member of the Park Slope Food Co-op, and right around the corner, and I had been studying. It was my first semester away from home in college. And I was like, I'm going to go play a game of pickup basketball to get some relief. To get a little bit of this pressure off. So I go play a basketball game. And I'm from Missouri. And if you know anything about street ball, every neighborhood, every hood, every city got its own street ball rules and its own street ball culture. So I'm used to playing street ball in Kansas City. And here I am in Brooklyn where they take it a lot more serious. They want to run it like it's an official, formal NBA championship game. They're a lot more serious with the rules of street ball in New York than they are in Missouri. But anyway, They weren't very happy with me. I was 6'3". I knew how to post up in the paint. I knew I had some techniques that would help my team to win. But they just didn't like how I played. So everybody on my team was kind of frustrated with me. So anyway, I'm supposed to post up in the paint. And I decided I want to try something different. I got a rebound. I try to take it coast to coast. I try to drive in for a layup. I couldn't. I come back out through the three-pointer line. I'm not good at shooting from the outside, and I messed up the shot. And there was this guy, Puerto Rican kid, under the goal that wanted me to scoop the ball to him so he could get an easy layup. But I'm trying to shoot a three, and I totally miss it. And the Puerto Rican kid, who was of white complexion, straight silky corn silk hair, kind of hair Beyonce would buy, says to me, yo, next time pass the rock. Everybody's been barking at me the whole time, so I didn't take offense to that. But then he said, pass the rock, nigga. And I went cold. Like, this is the first non-black person who wasn't a police officer to call me nigga in my entire life, to my face. So I turn around and I said, what did you just call me, you spick? Because I thought we was hurling racism. I thought we was doing racism. And a Puerto Rican kid stands there and he looks as shocked as I was. So we're both standing there in a state of shock, and all the black dudes, it was probably like 3 Puerto Rican cats and like 15 to 20 black dudes. And all the black dudes huddle around me like, yo, son, you don't say that? What's wrong with you? And they used to call me country. They were like, yo, you don't understand, dude. We don't do that here. I said, we don't do what? We don't use racial slurs? I agree. Let's not use racial slurs. But I was taught. The way I was raised is if somebody call you out your name, you call them out their name back. And he was like, nah, it ain't like that, dog. It ain't racist like it is in where you from. They used to say I was from Kansas because they thought Kansas City couldn't be in Missouri because it wouldn't. So it was like, yo, we ain't like that in Kansas, son. We don't do that, son. Yo, word is bond, son. You don't do that, son. And everybody's just tearing me down. So I grabbed my Mecca jacket and went home, mad as hell. But I quickly learned in New York that Latino people, Hispanic people, are allowed to say nigga. But we couldn't use Latino slurs. And nobody even said they were black. They was just down. They cool like that, son. And I never in my freaking life, because Kansas City, my homeboy, my best friend, his baby mama's Mexican, West Side. We used to go kick it and hang out on the West Side. I used to engage in activism because the Mexicans on the West Side was just as oppressed as the black people on the South Side in Kansas City. I dated one summer. This is when I hate to admit it, but remember when Mariah Carey came out with that, you treated me kind, sweet destiny. Everybody thought that Latino girls were Mariah Carey. And I dated this girl the whole summer. And I used to go to her family house, and they would use words. They would call each other beaners and wetbacks and use all kind of terms and slurs in terms of endearment. Y'all like to think black people are the only people that say slurs internally with each other. Everybody does it. Jews call each other Hebes and all kind of names. They make all kind of Jewish stereotypes against others. You go watch Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's one long Jewish stereotype mocker. But anyway, everybody does it, but we just get torn down. We do it, we're subhuman. Or other people want to join us. And I never once, when I was over my little Mexican girlfriend's house, never once did I ever have a desire to partake in their internal culture and be able to, why can't they call each other these names? Why can't I do it? That never crossed my mind. I remember I had a friend named John Hernandez when I was like in the 3rd, 4th grade. And I was cool with him. But he wasn't black. He didn't have to pretend to be black. I wasn't. He was Mexican. I wasn't Mexican. I didn't need to pretend to be Mexican. We were both fully who we were, and we was just cool like that. And the Mexicans, they ate their food. They listened to their music. Sometimes you could participate. Sometimes they come participate, and everybody was cool. But it was never this, When I went to New York, it was something different. But that never sat well with me. And now black folks is mad. They're saying, you know, Cardi B and Fat Joe can say nigga, but there's other Latino people they don't want to say it. And now you want to lie and say all Latinos are black when Latinos been fighting for generations to be as unblack and non-black as possible. Trying to specifically pick, you know, if you with a Latin person, go get you, do the experiment. Get you a Latin person of the opposite gender. So if you're a black woman, get you a Latin friend who's a male. If you're a single male or a single woman and you come to their picnic, you know, you go to a quinceañera walking with your friend and watch everybody gasp. And then when they say, oh, this is just my friend, everybody will have a sigh of relief because they don't want no more tainted black blood. And this ain't me talking off the cuff of my head. I've been told this. It's been written down. I ain't even got to talk about my personal experience. Everybody knows this because it happens in America too. So everybody's our friend. The Irish came here. The Irish were our friends when the Irish were when the United States used to discriminate against Catholics and discriminate against Irish. The Italians were our friends, and they even had a little black swagger. And they used to talk about Italy and how Italy was the furthest reach of North Africa. Even Dr. Clark used to talk about that. And they called the Italians and the people from Southern Europe, they called them swarthy. And they say Northern Europeans, the Aryan Europeans used to discriminate. Even Hitler was uncomfortable. Watch Hitler when he went to tour the Roman ruins of Rome. And he's walking around with Mussolini and his fascists. He's very uncomfortable because he's like, these people ain't really white. They're not Aryan and they ain't even really white. And the Roma, gypsy people. Because white folks, they didn't start discrimination, racial and ethno discrimination with us. They've been doing it to each other for generations. But all these people come to the United States and they're our friend. Until they get integrated into the dominant economy and get fully embraced by the white race. And then the white people say, yeah, I know y'all was cool with the blacks, but if you want to be a real American, you got to discriminate against blacks. And I know this ain't comfortable. Some of y'all got some brown people that y'all cool with, y'all kick it with, y'all love, and they cool, they funny. I know. I do too. But the truth is the truth. And if you find an honest Latino, they're not going to sit there and say we all black. They're not going to deny the racism and the racial disparities and the racial hierarchies of Latin America. They're going to acknowledge it, they're going to claim it, and they're going to challenge it and fight it and try to subvert it. They're not going to say, well, I'm black as long as I'm making money off of black folks. But I get you Fat Joe's children and Fat Joe's grandchildren will be voting Republican, playing golf, and eating mayonnaise casserole. Because they love they do that transference. They love to do that jump. You don't believe me? Just start interacting. Go. I mean, one thing you say, whether it's here in Chicago, the Latin community is very open. You can go there and talk to people. They're very honest when they find out you're not bullshitting. I'm sorry. You're not fronting. You just go there and speak. They'll tell you all of this. They love nothing more than talking about home. If you show a genuine interest in people's history and people's culture, they'll start telling you honestly. And I'm not saying this to create some Latino dude. It's a Latino dude that came on my page. Velasquez or something. And he's like, he's mad at me for saying that, he said, when I posted the article where Fat Joe said all Latinos are black, and I said, what happened to the Spaniards and Portuguese who committed genocide against the natives and enslaved the Africans? Where are they now? Did all of them pack up and go back to Europe, go back to Spain and Portugal? Where are they? And then he was like, oh, you said there are no Latinos of African descent. And before I could even reply, somebody else got on the feed and said, he said nothing about denying that there are Latinos of African descent. He said that there are also white ones. And so the guy gets on there, but then he turns and flips and said, Black people are getting exterminated in this country. Black people are getting their butt kissed in their country. You need to focus on that. And I'm like, wow, you sounding mighty white. That sounds like something the alt-right dude would say. So they jump. And one thing about white folks, when white folks, the white, Aryan, Anglo-Saxon white folks, when they get in trouble, they're really good for making alliances. That's why they were over there fighting with the Kurds until they didn't need the Kurds anymore. And what you will find throughout the history in the United States, whenever black and brown start to rise up together, the whites will go to the browns and say, hey, I can cut you a better deal than the blacks. And that's why you got a large segment of Latino people, even though Donald Trump appears to hate Latino people, Hispanics, he hates them more than he hates blacks. As far as policy, maybe not in his heart, but his policies are ravaging their communities. And you still got hardcore dyed-in-the-wool Latino Republicans. A larger segment of Latinos are Republicans than black. But then again, that's also the pro-life Catholic stance, but you know the deal. And that's another thing. The Catholic Church is very powerful in Latin America. And if you don't know that the Catholic Church ain't racist, but anyway, I say all that to say, all Latinos ain't black, all Latinos don't need to be black, and all that we don't need to pretend that they all black. Latino says nothing about your race. The Latino only tells you about where you're born. And that's it. Tells you nothing else. I'm Latino. Oh, you were born in Latin America. You could be black. You could be white. You could be native. You could be even in Peru. They have a large segment of Japanese Latinos who do quite well there. You go to Peru and there are many Japanese Latinos. They're not black. They got no African heritage, no African blood. They were born and been in Latin America for generations. So you can be Japanese or of any of Asian descent. There are millions of East Indians from India living in Latin America. They've been there for generations. They classify as Latino. We've had enough hustles run on us. And ask your Latino friend, if they all black, how the hell did 9,000 plus, that's just the ones they accounted for, how did 9,000 plus, let me sip some tea on before I say it. Too hot. How did 9,000 plus Nazis run? Some of the most Klaus Barbie, Adolf Eichmann. They were in Latin America wearing straw hats, wearing those loose shirts, whistling in the wind. How? How? They didn't run to Africa. They couldn't even come to America. They didn't go to other parts of Europe. They didn't go to Sweden, where the Aryan purebloods. They went to Latin America, and they were cozy AF. They weren't just cozy because there is a large segment of the Latin community that are white people, even German descent. There are German Latinos, not just Afro Latinos, Indian Latinos, Latin Latinos. There are German Latinos. Large community of German immigrants that have been there for hundreds of years. And they white. Don't play with me. That's what I love when Soulja Boy said that. Stop playing with me. Latinos! Man, Soulja Boy is hella entertaining. He's more entertaining when he doesn't rap than when he does. Anyway, Q4 Radio, AM 1680, Bro Diallo Show, DialloKenyatta.com, Patreon.com/Diallo Kenyatta. Help to keep the Bro Diallo Show on the air, because I'm pretty damn sure I've probably lost somebody, but I gotta tell it. I'd rather be in a corner, sitting quietly, than come on the air and say some falsehoods to the people. Feel free to challenge me. Feel free to even call into the Bro Diallo Show with your counter arguments, because I stand by what I say. And if I don't know about it, I don't talk about it. If I don't know about it, I'll send you to the right people who do. But this I know. firsthand sources. Anyway, let's keep going. I wanted to today's show topic, because I wanted to talk about Bitcoin a little bit. I ain't even talking about this get rich quick schemes you money hungry hoes is dealing with. I wanted to talk about Bitcoin and CO2 emissions, but my time is running short. But anyway, just put this pin in this. Bitcoin, the University of Munich, the Technological University of Munich, did a research study and found that Bitcoin is responsible for 22 megatons of CO2 emissions a year. Global warming, because of the Bitcoin mining and the high level of energy it takes to run these processors that are the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure to the digital blockchain technology and the Bitcoin cryptocurrency infrastructure. So to create this fictional currency, we are literally destroying or contributing to the destruction of the real world. But I digress. I wanted to say more about that, but I don't have the time. I also wanted to talk about Tatiana Jefferson. Because if you know, Jefferson is my family name. Grandma Jefferson. Happy birthday, Grandma Jefferson. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday. I know Grandma Jefferson don't listen to the show because I don't, she can't listen to me talk about her Jesus. She can't listen to her scrawny grandson get myself sent to hell. But anyway, Tanisha, my sister, tell Grandma I said happy birthday. I will be calling her as soon as I can. And send me a picture of Grandma. Text me a picture. Anyway, we all know the tragedy. Now, I did a whole rant about how I'm done atrocity hopping. I'm done atrocity hopping. But it seems like, and what I call atrocity hopping is when all these horrendous things happen to black people, and we go from one horrendous thing to the next horrendous thing, and the space in between those two horrendous things, and sometimes the space between those horrendous things is one news cycle. 48 hours sometimes we'll get an atrocity and then another racist atrocity in 48 hours. But whatever that space is, but sometimes we'll have a lull. It's not really that atrocities aren't happening. There just aren't any atrocities that are happening that are getting mainstream media attention. But we go from one atrocity, and the reason I call it atrocity hopping is because in the meantime, in between time, between one atrocity that makes mainstream attention to the next, there are no fundamental changes within the black community or within the greater society. So when there are no fundamental changes within our community or within the greater society, I call that atrocity hopping. We go from one protest sign to the next. We shouldn't even make like cardboard signs anymore. We should make all of our signs on those little white boards and with the erasable ink. So we could just have the same protest, but you just rub in a new hashtag, a new name. And I don't mean to diminish the death and the suffering that our people are going through, but I'm sick of it. Like if you're living your life in America as a black person and you see something happen that you feel so compelled that you want to shout your voice out. Another thing, as you examine the society and say what needs to change, you also need to look within yourself and say, what do I need to do? Because this thing that happened will not allow me to go back to living the life I was living the day before it happened. I got to make some change where I'm going to make some commitment of time, commitment of resources. I ain't even saying you got to grow dreadlocks, take a machete, and go live in the woods until the revolution comes. It ain't even got to be a drastic change. But you should look at the society and say, these are the things that prop up this society. Capitalism, individualism, racism. These are the things that prop up this society. Individualism, consumerism. This is the infrastructure. These are the fundamental cultural practices of the society. And these are the ones I participate in. And I'm going to change how I feed myself, how I entertain myself, how I interact with other people. I'm going to make some type of change that is going to cause an extraction or a disruption or a diminishment of the legitimacy of the dominant society. What are you going to do? And like I said, it doesn't even have to be that drastic. And every time something happens, there should be some, unless you're already a fully committed revolutionary Pan-Africanist, then you just need to stay your path. But if you're outraged and you're living the standard American life, eating the standard American diet with the standard American goals and standard American ambitions and a standard American lifestyle, and you plan to go to Disney and you plan to go to secure the bag and you want to upgrade your car, when you pay off this loan, you want to go from a Ford to a Mercedes. If you just that cat, if you are a member of the black masses, go join an organization. Or if you're already in an organization, some musty storefront church, some fraternity, walk in there and say, hey, we got to revolutionize. We got to radicalize this. You know, if you just a blue dog Republican, a blue dog Democrat, say, hey, I'm going to keep voting Democrats, but I'm going to go to the Democratic local party chapter. And I'm going to submit the names of some activists. I'm going to try to at least get some more progressive, if not radical people on the ballot. I'm going to go to where they develop in the party platform and put some progressive or revolutionary changes in the party platform. I'm going to become a pen pal with a Haitian, or start to communicate with brothers on the continent, the Guyanese or Kenyan, and start talking about Pan-Africanism. I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to read a book a month on the struggles of my people or about African culture. You should be some change, some appreciable change in your life. If you want the society to change, you have to change. And I hate this saying, be the change you want to see in the world. It's dumb, but it's true. I hate it, but it's true. And all change ain't good change. And one thing I want to say about this new nonsense people are trying to push with that, don't call the police on black people. And it's just so stupid. As if the white man needs you to call him before he can come do some harm to you. Who called the white man to Africa? Hello, white man. We got gold here and beautiful black bodies that are really good at laboring in the sun. Come check we. You need to tell her. In fact, 911 didn't even exist till 1968, which is a whole nother show topic about the emergence of 911 and the 1968 black rebellions. But 911 didn't even exist for the 90% of U.S. history. Household phones in people's homes it wasn't until 1950 that over 50% of households even had a phone. 1950. We all got relatives that were alive at night. Most of us got relatives that were alive. Many of your grandparents, great uncles didn't even have a phone in their house. Didn't have a phone. They had to go all the way to the local corner store to use a phone. Nobody had a phone in their house. So what I'm saying that to say is, long before 911 existed, long before your grandma, your great uncle, your great auntie, your great grands even had a phone, the white people were very efficient at killing and dehumanizing and mutilating and murdering and incarcerating and framing black folks. And I know I said killing and murdering is the same thing, but sometimes it ain't. They can kill our souls, kill our spirits. Y'all believe in spirits and souls. It's called menticide. They can kill us intellectually without even touching us physically. Kill our minds, our capacity to think. So black folks not calling the police. It's just so reactionary. It's such a knee-jerk. Someone called the police and they killed a black woman. Oh, put down the phone. As if the phone is the damn problem. There's a movie called The Jerk. And somebody was trying to assassinate the jerk with Steve Martin. And Steve Martin was working at a gas station and he was standing in front of oil cans. And so when the assassin tried to kill him, he shot the oil can. And Steve Martin, instead of looking at the assassin or even realize thought the problem was the cans. He was like, somebody really hates these cans. They're shooting the cans. Then he ran behind another stack of cans and ducked behind that stack of cans. And he's like, boom, the assassin tries to kill him again. He shoots. It's like, wow, he really hates these cans. So Steve Martin started flipping over and throwing the cans away so that the violence would stop. It's 2019. We got black sociologists, we got black criminologists, we got black psychologists, we got black anthropologists, we got a lot of black people we got black political scientists and public policy experts, as I am, on paper, officially. And these are the solutions we're coming up with. Stop calling the police on black people. Really? We think that, oh yes, it's the phones that are the problem. The calling of the police that are the problem. That's yes. If they weren't called, then how could they come to our communities? As if there's a magical barrier. Like the police are freaking vampires. They can't come unless you call them. I'm saying our people are dying, and this is the kind of nonsense we are engaged in. Don't call the police on black folks. And let me tell you something about calling the police on black folks. If a black person ain't figured out by 2019 that they got no business calling the police on black folks, a movement and a hashtag and a plea to tell them not to ain't gonna change a damn thing unless there's real consequences. Hell, I'd respect y'all. They say, hey, any black person that is known to call the police is going to be ostracized culturally. And anybody that rock with them is going to be ostracized and expelled from the community and not canceled on the internet. But they don't come to no cookout. They don't get to come to the churches. They don't get to be members of our community. We're going to have real concrete consequences for race traitors. I'd rock with that. It's still on the reactionary side of things, but damn, we can't do wrong right. And like I said, the 911, most people in the United States were alive before 911. We were getting killed by the police before 911 existed. We were being killed by police before most of us had telephones in our home. The phone is not the problem. But I'll get into that. It's just stop being so damn reactionary. Let's talk about the topic. I'm sorry. I overindulged myself. I also want to talk more about forgiveness. But we gonna be here. Bro Diallo show. Thanks to the support of my Patreons, I'm gonna be here. So we ain't gotta rush it. But I wanted to say something real quick with the little time that I had left about I ain't even gonna be I gotta say something because that's the title. Pick-Mes and Simps and Occult pro-blackness. First, let me talk about occult pro-blackness. Now, when I say occult, I'm not talking about in the religious sense. You have this concept where the occult in a medical sense, or I would say a medical sense or a political sense. The occult means unseen. So when they talk about occult forces working in the government, that doesn't mean that they worship Baphomet, that they do blood sacrifices and rituals. When they say occult powers or occult forces working in the government, that means unseen or unknown. Or in a medical sense, if they say you have occult blood in your urine or you have occult blood in your stool, that means that it's not visible to you. So you give a urine sample and it looks like your regular white to yellowish urine, but then they put it on a microscope and they find that there are active blood cultures or active blood cells within your urine. But you can't see it. It's not concentrated enough to be seen with the visible eyes. There's on a cellular level. The same thing with your stool, and I don't want to be gross, but I want to be accurate. So if the doctor does a swab, and to some people, I guess a colorectal check or a prostate check will turn you gay for some of these homophobes out here. But I digress. The doctor does a swab, and it's just your normal brown fecal matter. But then he puts it on a microscope. It's like, no, you obviously have some type of slight GI bleed or ulceration because you have occult blood in your stool. So occult doesn't just mean, in fact, even in the religious world, when they have occult practices, those are practices that are not known. So the Catholic Church has a lot of occult rituals and occult factions within the Catholic Church. Those are the aspects of the Catholic Church that are not seen by the everyday regular Catholic people. The same thing with the Masonic. Masons are not religious. They are secular. But then you have just the regular everyday Masons and the Masonic lodges, and they raise money for children and they do these silly little rituals, cable toll. But then you have some of the deeper Masonic rituals that are not known to the members, and you have to get up to a higher degree of Masonic initiation before you go. So that's what occult means. It means unseen, unknown, hidden. A lot of times it's even hidden from the person who's doing it. A lot of people who are members of an organization like the Jehovah's Witness that came to my house this weekend, they are part of an organization and they're not even aware of the larger agenda of the Jehovah's Witness. The same thing with the Mormon. There are a lot of black Mormons who don't know anything about the true teachings of the Mormon church, about that black people don't have souls, that black skin is the mark of Cain, and black people are not only cursed by God, but mandated to be servants and subservient to all of the sons of Shem and Japhet. They don't know anything. They just know, I love God, and these is good people who's nice to me. So that's what occult means. Unseen, unknown. And even the person who is engaged in occult behavior might not even be fully aware. Like you ask the average black Mormon, if you know one, if you're unfortunate enough to have a black Mormon in your family, say, what is the white horse prophecy? They're going to tilt their head like a confused puppy. Even though they're out here promoting Mormonism or promoting Jehovah's Witnessism, they don't even know the higher upper echelons agendas in the organization they've given their life to. So that's what occult means. And there is a lot, and I think this needs to, because I try to introduce a lot of things into the lexicon, and I'm sorry. I just think we need to revolutionize language. Language is a weapon. I've been reading Noam Chomsky since I was in high school. And language is a tool, it's a weapon, it is embedded in culture. And even though this ain't our mother tongue, it's our language now. And we impact the language, and the language impacts us. And as you speak it this, so you shall thinketh this. And as you thinketh this, so shall you doeth. As you speak is as you think and as you do. So you can love your child. And sincere love of your heart and your child. And you say, you idiot, you dummy. And don't give them any words of encouragement. Then what's real to the child? Your love or your words? So anyway, there is an enormous amount of unseen, unacknowledged, even unintentional anti-blackness amongst black people. And that is called occult anti-blackness. You have a lot of people who are conscious, who are revolutionary, who are pro-black, who are anti-black AF. You have a lot of woke AF people that are anti-black AF. You have a lot of black people that are sincerely want to do right by black folks, who sincerely want to stop everything from police atrocities, who want to do everything to empower us, who when they see Tyler Perry open a studio or see LeBron James give 8,000 pairs of Nike sneakers to poor black kids, or they see the black woman become the first black general of the Marine Corps, and they feel sincere happiness and joy and personal pride when they see Obama in the Oval Office, and they are genuinely happy. And they genuinely believe that vicariously the achievements of those black individuals will reverberate and inspire us all. And a lot of things that they do and they advocate for are subversive to the interests of black people, detrimental to our long-term survival. That is occult anti-blackness. And two elements of occult that I find, two things that have strong elements of occult, unseen anti-blackness embedded within it, is this concept of Pick-Mes and this concept of Simps. And I don't have the time to get into this. I really hate. So anyway, now that we've covered occult anti-blackness, I'm going to talk about how Pick-Mes and Simps are part of occult anti-blackness. But I really need everyone to start understanding occult anti-blackness, because just like there was a really good book called Racism Without Racists, about how overt racism is no longer as prominent. Even Trump will get up and sign racist legislation. He will go to Alabama and have a Trump rally and say the most racist things. And if you point at Trump and say, Trump, you racist, Trump will denounce and deny it. There are no racists in America. There are, but I mean 90% of white folks will collapse at your ankles and weep and slobber all over your shoes if you call them racist. Because they don't want to be racist. So now racism, now they call it institutional racism, but a lot of it's occult racism. And we're to the point where you even have black people saying, what are black people complaining about? Jay-Z's a billionaire. How can any of us feel bad about anything? It's all good. Or like Bill Cosby told us 20, 30 years ago, the only time the police bust our heads or shoot us in the face is when we're stealing pound cakes. So if you don't want to get assaulted by the police, don't steal pound cakes. He said, I mean, I'm ad libbing, but you know, he said it. Go Google Bill Cosby / pound cake. He said it. Anyway, now that we understand that racism has gone underground, that is often unseen, and you have to do some deep thinking or some deep penetration because you say, hey, is this just unfortunate circumstances or is it vicious, racist, anti black racism? Same thing. Now, if we take black folks and put white folks aside for a moment, and I know some of y'all, it's really hard to put white folks aside because to y'all, white folks are the center of the universe and nothing happened before and nothing will come after white folks. But let's just, if you do your best to put all white folks aside and all their mess aside and look at just black folks. Now, within our community, as we are amongst ourselves, just like there is hidden racism in the larger society, there is hidden anti-blackism. And it used to be the anti-blacks would just come and say, I'm black, but I hate nappy hair. I hate black folks. And I'm glad they put us in slavery, or else we'd be monkeys in Africa. And coming to America, we get money and we get Christ. And that's good enough for me. But that's the 1950s, 1940s anti-black. That's the Hannibal Williams anti-black. And if you don't have that book, Black Traitor by Hannibal Williams, get that book. You don't understand Uncle Tom Sellout Coons if you ain't read The Order. He is the great godfather. Oh, Hannibal. But now we got a lot of black people who don't really love black people, who don't represent the interests of black people, who will sell us out, but they are pro-black. They wear African garb. They got African name. They got black spouses, and they know how to floss. They know how to whip. They know how to name. They the blackest looking people. They even come to us and tell us they want to fight with us. They want to help us. They want to be down with us. But when you look past the surface, you see that they are as anti-black as the old school Clarence Thomas quality Uncle Tom. And we're real good at identifying the Clarence Thomas Uncle Tom, but we're not good at seeing these, what I call these new Negroes, these pro-black, anti-black people. So anyway, Wednesday show. Okay, subscribe if you're on YouTube, Patreon if you got the resources, kick in donations. Shout out to everybody that kicked in to help sustain the Bro Diallo show. Then we're going to talk about how Pick-Me, this Pick-Me title and this Simp title has strong traces of occult anti-blackness. So I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 1680, City of Chirac, State of Illinois, all of that. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace. Not tomorrow. Damn, why I always say that? It's tomorrow to me, because when I'm off the air, I just go sit in the box until the next show. So I'll see y'all Wednesday. Peace. Oh crap. Sorry. I always forget to turn this off.